Today's training is a fun one. This is the app we worked on last session. What we did in the last session was we added payment processing using Stripe. After adding that, we got the ability to put in card information here. This is just using a test gateway. We can process a payment. And that unlocks this recipe here. Now they have the ability to see this little recipe that is created. And this little tool for those who didn't make the previous call, had a schedule conflict or whatever, is just a little tool that generates beer brewing ideas for breweries and uses AI to do that. It makes for a fun little example for this. Today, we are going to work on putting a webhook in. If a payment is processed, we need to be able to send whoever pays a receipt, right? What I don't want to do is build a full email sending structure into a little app like this. That's just a lot of extra work that's not needed. When you're doing your apps, there are a lot of tools like Zapier, N8N, High Level, things like that have webhook automation capability. So instead of building in this functionality to capture information stored in a database, compose an email, properly send the email, connect to an SMTP provider to do all of that, instead of doing all of those steps and building all of that manually inside the app here, all we have to do is set it up to send a message to a webhook. And then we can use any outside tool to catch that webhook and do all the processing. Now, here is one of the rules of developing in AI agent tools that I mention all the time. There's one task, one chat. So we did our task. We added the name information. We need to open up a new chat. So we're going to go here. Let's change this model over to Sonnet 4. Okay. Let's say, please look at how payments are captured in this app and tell me if there is a good place to call a webhook and send over the payment amount, customer name, customer email, and IP address to a webhook whenever a payment is made. I will provide a webhook URL. Do not make changes. Now, Claude Sonnet 4 has been ignoring the do not make changes lately, so I'm going to watch it real close here and just stop it if it starts to try to make changes in this process. You can go into chat mode. I have found that Sonnet with chat mode, something about the system prompt that's sent, and you can't see Windsurf system prompt when it's sent here, but something about the system prompt here is kind of hamstringing it in what it can look at. It doesn't look at all the files in chat mode like it should. I leave it in write, and then I just watch it real close and smack it right here on this button, this red button, if it starts to change stuff. Okay. It's adding it to memory, which I appreciate, although I think the memory server may be erroring today. We will see. Clicks unlock. Here we go. Put it in this endpoint. And it gives us an idea about where it could put a webhook. So that looks pretty clean. Please add that additively without changing anything else. Then tell me where you added it. I will put in the webhook. There we go. Now, while that's working, let me show you what I'm talking about for a webhook URL. Quick overview on a webhook and how they work here. I have this pulled up in one of my favorite automation tools personally is High Level. You can use any automation tool you want. N8N, if you're running your own N8N server, or Zapier is a popular one. Make.com is another. But all of those tools give you a URL like this right here on the screen. And it's a custom URL that is listening for a post get put request. And basically what happens is when we call a webhook, the backend code is, for lack of a better term, clicking that link and sending it a block of information. And the link is always listening for that. So whenever it receives that click and the block of information, then it loads that in and your automation tool can take action based on the information that's sent in. We are going to copy, in this case, copy this webhook to our app, and then we're going to process a payment and see if that information comes through and if we can map that information anywhere. Got it. So we have our webhook URL right here. Okay. So what they're talking about is this .env file right here, where they added it as a variable, which is an absolutely fine way to do it. I will add it to the .env file. When developing locally, this is the .env file, and you want to exclude it from GitHub. I have a video on TikTok, I know, and it probably is on YouTube too, about how to do that. So you can exclude it from GitHub, so you're not pushing your environment file up every time you push your files out to GitHub. But what it has is all these variables right here, and it's going to use this payment webhook URL variable like this. And that's going to go right here. We paste that in. Then right here, I've pasted in that URL that I copied from here. And I'm not worried about these Stripe keys. These are sandbox keys. They don't actually do anything. We're going to save this. That's in place. Now it's in our env file. And when you update your env file, you have to restart the app so that it can pull in the new environment variables. This is similar to, if you go to Replit and you pull up really any app that you want, you can go into secrets. And these are the same things as what you would have in your env file. Replit just handles them as secrets over here. And if you change one of these, then you have to relaunch your app or redeploy it. Go back over here and we'll do Control-C to down in terminal here to stop the application, npm run dev to run it again. This is a very small application, so it starts up real quick. There it is. And we will just see what type of sours we can make for the summer. I don't know why I picked sours. I don't really like them, but some people do. Let that run. We're going to test this out. So it shows up here. We're just going to send a test payment. And we're going to pay. The recipe is unlocked. Our functionality still remains there. Let's see if we got a post to our webhook. So now we pasted in this webhook. We're going to tell it to fetch sample requests, because if it posted, we should have received a message here, and we did not. It's not coming through. This is where the debugging fun comes in. The first thing we're going to do is right-click on our page. We're going to go to Inspect and check our console to see if we have any errors. I don't see any errors in here. We didn't put in a lot of logging, so it's not likely that an error would have shown up, but I want to check and make sure. We're going to go back over here and look at our terminal log. And we can see here that the webhook call failed. So it didn't write it correctly. We're just going to copy this and put here, do not make changes. the webhook call failed. And here is the error. And we paste that in. You always want to be specific about errors. Don't just say, hey, it didn't send a message, right? We don't want to just be like, it never showed up. The AI will just keep guessing, and you'll spend a lot of time guessing, a lot of credits guessing, when you can just tell it what the error is if you go and look for the error here. Tell me why and do not make changes. Here we go. Let's see. I think rather than messing with the Stripe information that's coming back, I would say we capture the contact info and then just hold it and wait for a confirmation from Stripe and then send that information through. Then hold it and wait for the Stripe payment to process before sending. Do not make changes. Here we go. Let's see, modify this. Yeah, I think we should just pass it in the customer request rather than messing with Stripe's data. Let's do option 1. Please do option 1. And do not mess with the Stripe functions. Change nothing else. Okay, we're going to have that run through. And let's take a look at what we've changed so far. We have our change log. So this is something that shows up when you use a PRD like this. This tool creates a change log instruction for every app that you build, and that puts it into the build for you. So what's going on here, I'm not having to go in and necessarily make updates to the change log myself. The AI is receiving that instruction every time it goes to a file to make a change. And that was generated right here in the PRD tool. So then you basically have a running change log of everything that's been done to the application, which is really nice. Go ahead and close those files out. Take a look here. What did it do? Okay, let's see if the changes it made runs through for us. Control C, hit the up arrow just to get this command again, because I already typed it in once. That restarts our server. And we will do a summer wheat beer for this one. Okay. We'll unlock this recipe. And I should memorize a different one of their cards probably. Okay, let's go see if we had the same error here. The same error did not show up. So let's see if it came through. Check for new requests. And here is our request that came through. Now what has happened is we've processed a payment and sent that information to this webhook, and the webhook received it. And we can see what it received. It received the amount that was paid, the customer name, customer email, and the IP address, which this IP address is correct because it's running locally. And it came with a timestamp as well here. We can take this information and save it to the client record, then basically be able to send them a receipt with their name and email to their email and the IP address that they paid from, what recipe they bought right here. It's basically an official receipt that we can create right out of this webhook. Now, there's one fun thing that I would like to add to this webhook if we can. I would like to be able to include the recipe. Does that sound like a cool idea? So we could actually include the recipe in the webhook and be able to email people their recipe. Because right now it just stays up on the screen. And again, instead of making a whole app to email recipe information, we're just going to go and pull the recipe information right down into the webhook. So that is functional. What I'm going to do is commit this to GitHub with the changes before we go and add something else. since that is tested and functional. Sound like a plan? Gives me a little bit of a save point. I can branch off of there if I want to, if something goes awry. Or what's really cool, if I don't like what we build and it just gets to be a really big mess here, because I've saved my files here, I can just come over into the IDE and delete all changes beyond that point, and my app gets restored back to the way it was. So it's a really nice way to not break stuff as you go along. New topic, new chat. Always. Do not make changes. There is a webhook. We have to load in our context. So a new chat, it doesn't know what I'm doing. It doesn't know what we just built. There's a webhook that is called and a payment is made. It sends over info like the name and email and IP and timestamp. Okay. I would like to include the details of the recipe they purchased with the webhook content. Needs to include the whole recipe. Look and see what is needed for this to happen. Do not make changes. All right, so we're loading in the context of what we want. The more you can tell it about where to look, the better. Giving it this sort of context lets it know where to look and not just go dig through the whole application. Based on this, here's what it found. This is the info that's sent. Only sends the recipe ID, but not the actual recipe content. Needs to be fetched from storage. Okay. Here we go. Make this change additively. Do not change anything else. The webhook is currently working, and we only want to add the recipe, not change the webhook. Okay, we'll see what it changes here. And while we are doing that, let's save this trigger and take a look at what we can do with it. The first thing you would do in this particular application, this is high level. It's slightly different whether you use Make or Zapier or something like that. But in high level, once you send a webhook, you have to run the create contact function so that it can find and update the contact in the system. So we would add a field and map that. We would take this full name and we're going to grab the webhook details and put in the customer name, right? We called that customer name into here. And then we need an ID field, which in this case would be our email. This is a non-duplicate field. So we're going to grab that customer email. And then I don't know if I have custom fields in here for time. Doesn't look like I have time set up. So we'll just leave that. Right now, we'll create the name and email. And we will save that here. And now for automation, I could say, send email like this. And I could say it's from me. Put that down here, lazy style. Here is your recipe. And we would go down here and say, hey, let's put in their first name. Now, what's neat about this particular tool, this is high level. When I send a full name and I post it in, it automatically parses it into first and last name for us. So it splits it on the break. So I put in the full name, but now it knows that there's Courtney and there's Ham because that's the data we sent in. Here is your recipe. And then we don't have the recipe field yet. Here is your receipt. And we will say cost is, we'll grab this field right from the webhook, which was the amount, but I saw that it had just a 2. So we will put $, we'll put 2 zeros after it so it looks nice. We will say payment ID. It came with a payment ID here, right there. So we'll include that. And we'll put in the timestamp. We're basically creating our record here of what the client did, an IP address. We're going to grab that here like that. And we'll do a little enjoy and we'll save that. Let's go back over here and take a look at our. We'll see what we added, retrieve the full details. And it put in a little log here to say that if it couldn't retrieve the recipe, make a little note and then continue on. So don't fail the purchase process if the recipe can't be retrieved for some reason, which is fine with me. And let's go ahead and restart. So Control C, npm run dev. Go back over here and take a look and see where we are. All right, let's test this. Okay. So running that test, it unlocked the recipe here. We're going to see if we got an alert about it was potentially going to log an error here. So we're going to see if it logged an error about getting the recipe. I don't see that error showing up. So we're going to go back over here to our webhook and we're going to look, there's our next request right there. Let's see what came through. There is our whole recipe. Right there. Pretty cool, right? If we save that as our new mapping, we could then go down here and just put in those custom fields. So we go to our webhook trigger and we could say, here's our recipe name. And here is our description. And we're just putting in these fields one at a time. Here's the recipe overview. And here are the ingredients. And here are the brewing steps. And here are the details about ABV and IBU if you make the recipe as written. And now we have the ability to publish that. Whenever somebody orders a recipe, it sends them an email with all the recipe details. Easy as that. So that is how you use webhooks. That is how you add a webhook. There's a lot more you can do with them. Some of the things I like to do is create an admin backend for webhooks so that when you log into your application as an admin, you have a place to put in webhooks and maybe select which action those webhooks are for. For example, maybe you have a webhook for signups, but then you also have a webhook for status. A lot of people are building learning applications. So a person goes through a process and you want to maybe know when they reach a certain milestone or goal, you'd set up a separate webhook for that. And if you create an admin panel on the back end to manage your webhooks, it can clean it up a little bit, make it easier to manage, or you can just do them like we did in the code here. Pretty straightforward. Not a crazy process there. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please like and follow. And if you need help building or finishing your app, click the link in my bio to book a one-on-one Zoom call to take a look at your project.